To executive session, consider the following nominations. Calendar number 263, 502, 566, 567, 572, 624, 653, 654, 656, 657, 658, 659, 666, 667, 668, 669, 670, 671, 672, 673, 683, 684, 685, 686, 687, 688, 689, 690, 691, 692, 693, 694, 695, 696, 697, 698, 699, 700, 701, 702, 703, 704, 705, and all nominations placed on the Secretary's desk in the Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, and Navy, that the nomination be confirmed en bloc. Motion reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate. No further nomination be in order to any of the nominations. That any related statements be printed in the record. That the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that on Monday, May 27, 2012, at 4:30 p.m., the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the nominations calendar numbers 508, 568, 569. There will be 60 minutes for debate that be equally divided in the usual form, that upon the use or yielding back of that time, the Senate proceed to vote without no intervening action or debate on the nominations in the order listed. The motion reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate. No further motions be in order, that any related statements be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
May 7th.
Mr. President, in case I misspoke, it's hard to believe, but I ask that we take a look at this again. I ask unanimous consent that on Monday, May 7th, 2012. So everything else I said is valid. Another 20 days. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to pre morning business. Senators allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to calendar numbers 371 through 381, all post office naming bills, and we do it unblocked.
Without objection. So ordered.
I ask consent the bills be read a third time, passed, and blocked. Most reconsider be laid on the table and blocked. There be no intervening action or debate, and any related statements be printed in the record as if read.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent that we proceed to calendar number S-Res 419.
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 369, Senate Resolution 419, expressing the sense of the Senate that public servants should be commended for their dedication and continued service to the United States during Public Service Recognition Week.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table, there be no intervening action or debate, and any related statements be printed in the record as if read.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to S-Res 441, 442, 443, 444, and 445.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preambles be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table on block with no intervening action or debate, and any statements related to these resolutions be printed in the record at the appropriate place as if read.
Without objection.
I now ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to S-Conres 43.
The clerk will report.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 43, providing for a conditional adjournment or recess of the Senate and an adjournment of the House of Representatives.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I further ask, Mr. President, that the current resolution be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table, there be no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that from Thursday, April 26th through Monday, May 7th, the Majority Leader be authorized to sign duly enrolled bills or joint resolutions.
Okay. Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that notwithstanding the upcoming recess or adjournment of the Senate, the President of the Senate, the President pro tempore, and the majority and minority leaders be authorized to make appointments to commissions, committee boards, conferences, or interparliamentary conferences authorized by law by concurrent action of the two houses or by order of the Senate.
Without objection.
Finally, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business day, it adjourn and convene for pro forma sessions only. Mr. President, I again ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business day, it adjourn and convene for pro forma sessions only, with no business conducted on the following dates and times, and the following each pro forma session, the Senate adjourn until the next pro forma session, Monday, April 30th at 10:30 a.m., Thursday, May 3rd at 8:30 a.m., and that the Senate adjourn on Thursday, May 3rd until 2 p.m. on Monday, May 7th, unless the Senate has received a message from the House that it has adopted S-Conres 43, which will be the adjournment resolution. And if the Senate has received such a message, the Senate adjourn until May 7th at 2 p.m. under the provision of S-Conres 43. Following the prayer and the pledge, general proceedings be approved today. Morning hour be deemed expired and the time for the two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. That the Senate resume consideration then of the motion to proceed to S-2343, the Stop Student Loan Interest Rate Hike Act. And at 4:30, the Senate proceed to executive session under the previous order. Mr. President, just so everyone understands why we have in this the pro forma sessions possibility. I'm confident the House will adopt our adjournment resolution, but just in case they don't, that's why we have that in here.
Without objection.
Mr. President, there will be 3 roll call votes then on Monday, May 7th. There will be confirmation of 3 judicial nominations and 1 circuit nomination. There will be confirmation of 3 judicial nominations, which consists of 1 circuit court and 2 district courts. So, Mr. President, if there is no further business coming before the Senate, I ask we adjourn under the previous order.
Without objection, under the previous order, the Senate stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. on Monday, April 30th, 2012, unless the House agrees to Senate Concurrent Resolution 43.
The Senate has gavelled out, but earlier today, members passed a bill